All right, we are back for episode 4 of the Next Step series. And I'm just going to do another quick review just for anybody jumping into this. We've gone through this from episode 1, 2, 3, and 4. The second lesson was broken up into 2 different videos. So we have talked about, before you come into this, making sure you can play every single note, every single chord, know what the notes are, know what every chord is, major and minor, all up and down the keyboard. You want to be able to know your scales in every single key and know your inversions, where your root is, where your first inversion, where your second inversion is. You want to be able to hear the difference between a major and a minor chord. And then we talked about, let me go back through notes here and make sure I remember, octaves and what the octaves feel like. And then we talked about ear training and how to tell the difference between, obviously you know the sound of a major and a minor, but hearing the difference between what a 5 sounds like compared to what a 4 sounds like, compared to what a minor 6 sounds like, a minor 2 sounds like, a minor 3, so on and so forth. So in referencing that, we talked about how each note in the scale represents a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1 again. So another thing we discussed is that as a general practice, each number on that scale has a general assigned major or minor. And that typically goes major on the 1, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished, or you could think about it as a minor as well. And then we're back to the root, or the 1 again, which is a major. So now I'm really excited to get into this because as you're adding these steps, and I know this is a crash course and you've had a lot of stuff thrown at you, but as we're getting into this, you're unpacking all of these different concepts and ideas, theory, tools that you can use to just improve your level of play. And I'm going to do a kind of a nice compact reteaching of everything we've learned in comparison up to this point. But what I first want to get into is a chord that I use in just about every song, almost all the times that I have the opportunity to play it, because it adds so much, and that's a minor 7th. This video we're going to be talking about minor 7ths and major 7ths. And rarely do you use major 7ths in the style of worship that is of a contemporary service, but you could use major 7s as a nice way to flavor some things up from time to time, and that's what I do. And that's just up to the discretion of you, whoever's behind the instrument. So let's talk about minor 7ths. Anytime that you see a chord that has major or a minor, and you see numbers next to it, you may have seen some chord charts that show some really weird things, like a G diminished add 9. And that's just, it's a way to describe what the chord is using that number system that we have in the scale. Now we haven't gone through things like diminished chords yet. They're very, very pretty chords, but let's say, for instance, you had a G7 added 9. That would be a G chord in any way you play it, doesn't matter which inversion. So you have a G chord, and whenever it has a 7 chord, a G7, if it's a major 7, it will say a GM7 or a GMAG, or MAJ7, GMAJ7, and it'll look just like that. The letter G, and then maj, like major, MAJ, and then the number 7. So major chords, which we're going to discuss later on, There's a G major 7, and then there's a G dominant 7, and that usually just looks like a G and then the number 7. So a G major 7, in the scale of G, you're playing the G chord, plus you're adding the 7 note in that scale. That's the 7, and then 8 is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're playing a G chord plus the 7 note. It's a nice chord. It's beautiful. Can't be used all the time because your ear can fatigue from it if you have too much of it going on. But that's a 7. So a dominant 7 is the other one. That's a G with just the number 7 next to it. And what that is a flatted 7th, which means flat goes down, sharp goes up. So you take that 7 note of the scale and you flat it. It's a blues chord. Very, very common blues chord. It's got a nice sound to it as well. So that's what a G7 would look like. Now, if you did a G7 added 9, well, if you continued the scale, so the G scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if you gave the number 1 again, which is the G, the continuing number, it would be 8. And then you would basically start the scale over again, but this now becomes an 8 instead of a 1, which means that becomes a 9. So a G7 added 9, that is a G7 added 9. It's basically the same thing as saying it's a G major 9 chord, but that goes into a different theory that we don't need to discuss in this video. So that's just kind of a breakdown of what it looks like when you're reading some of these numbers, okay? The number systems and the chords and what they all mean, a G sus 13, whatever. So whenever you're seeing a minor chord, so let's just take the key of C again, it's our neutral key. If you were to go to the relative minor, you would see it written C major or C, and then you would see A minor, and it would just look like A with a small m, and that's just a straight A minor. What a minor 7th is, if you can guess this, it's a minor chord with the 7th of the scale added to it, okay? So, in the minor scale, which is, we talked about how the major scale of C doesn't use any black keys, all white. Every single one of these notes between the C and the C here in that octave are the same notes in the A minor scale. You just are starting at a different point. So that is the A minor scale. So you find the 7th tone of the A minor scale. It's right there, it's the G. So you're basically playing in an A minor 7th, an A minor, plus the 7th note. It's beautiful. As opposed to just the regular A minor. Now, there's a different way of thinking about this, okay? If you've done your homework, you know that the relative minor for a C major chord is A, the note A. So A minor. And you've hopefully memorized this in every single key. So a concept that you can remember with this is if you want to play an A minor 7th, there's a quick way to remember how to play it. Very quick. If you're playing in the key of C, and I'm just going to play, if you look at my inversion here, I'm going to play the second inversion, okay? This would be first inversion, or root. Root, first inversion, second inversion, okay? So I'm playing the G, the C, and the E. That's a C chord. If I go in a chord change from a C to an A minor 7, there's my C, here comes my A minor 7. Watch my right hand. I'm still playing a C chord. This is the magic of this chord. It's amazing. A C chord, a C triad, C major triad, with a seventh on the minor scale, which is a G, that's already being hit here. You're already hitting that G. So what would be the makeup of an A minor chord? An A minor chord is A, C, and E. Well, I'm already playing the C and E already as well. So the only missing note is the A, and you get to play that on the bass because it's an A minor chord, so the bass note has to be an A. So the quickest way to get and remember an A minor chord, or any minor chord, is take the root of that key. Let's just throw it out. Let's say we're playing in the key of A flat. Probably never going to happen in a worship service. But let's just say you're playing in the key of A flat. Now, you would know that the sixth minor, or the relative minor in the key of A flat, if you did your homework, is F. So let's try that theory. We go from an A major to an F minor 7. So I'm just going to move my bass hand down to an F and continue playing an A major chord here on my right hand. Sure enough, that is an F minor 7, because an F minor, and then you add the seventh of that minor scale. So let's see what that would be. In theory, it should be this note here, because that is what the makeup is of an F minor 7 chord. So let's just check it out. Seven, there it is. So you can use this literally in any key, and this will also help train your knowledge base, your reflex in playing music, to memorize where your relative minor is, which is your main minor you use in any key. It's the main one you go to. It's hard to play a song and not have a relative minor in there, unless it's a 1-4-5 progression. What is it, Louie Louie? Yeah, Louie Louie. It's a 3-chord song. There's no minors in that. Sometimes you have that, but if there is a minor that's going to be used, it's going to be your relative minor 9 times out of 10. And that minor 7 adds so much to it. So I want to give an example now that we have this nice chord of what it sounds like in using that, okay? And this is where I'm talking about going back to where we probably would have had one of you come in starting to where we can use some of this knowledge now, all right? And I think we've all probably played the song Reckless Love. So we're going to use that as an example. And we're just going to stay in the key of C so you can see what's going on, okay? So the chords in this song, you can listen to it, and in my head I can already tell I'm in the key of C. I can hear relative minor as the first one, so it's going to be an A minor. I can hear it go to a G, which is the 5, and I can hear it go to an F, which is the 4. In my head, I already know that that's where I'm at. So I don't need the chords in front of me. I already can hear the song in my head, and that's what it's being played. So we're in the key of C. We're going to start with an A minor, and I'm going to play this as though it's someone that didn't have any of the knowledge basis that we just learned in these last 3 or 4 videos, okay? So just a straight A minor, 5 G, and 4 F. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. Very straight, very basic. You have been so, so good to me. Now, if you take all the concepts we've learned so far and just apply even some of that into theory, we're in the key of C, okay? Now instead of playing your C like you would here with just the root position, we know that we can invert this. We're already working off of an A minor, a G, and an F. So if we want to stay in this box, we can do an inversion here, or we can do an inversion here of C. And if we wanted to start with an A minor 7, well, all we have to do is play a C on the right hand and play an A bass note on the left. So the way that I like to play this, an A minor 7, I like to use the second inversion, G, C, E, and play an A on the left. All right? Now, what I like to do then is go to the G right there and the F right there. But there's something else that you can do, and we are going to cover this in another video, and I don't know what I'm going to want to title that yet, but it's basically talking about chords that you don't have to change much, but the combination of your right and left hand makes it sound like it's fuller than what it is. And a lot of lead parts on keys kind of make this happen. So what that is playing a sustained 5 or G chord, okay? And what a sustain means is if you take your G chord or any triad and you raise your third is B, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. You raise your third up to the next note. A lot of songs even just start that way. The magic of this chord is that it makes you feel like the chord is changing, but it's not. On a G chord. Still on a G chord. It's just sustained. It's a sustained chord. So it's a G sus4. You might see it as a G sus4 because you're sustaining it to the fourth note. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you're in the key of C, you start with your A minor 7. You go to your 5 chord, which is a G, but you make that a sustained on the 4. And then you can go to your F. You can even do what's called a sustained 2, which you guessed it, you're just going to hit the second note with it in the scale. And we're in the chord of F, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to play the second one. Now, if you did all of that in the song Reckless Love, this is the basic way that we started out with. For I spoke a word, you were singing over me. If you do it with a minor 7, a suspended 4, 5, and a suspended 2, 4, it will sound like this. For I spoke a word, you were singing over me. It adds a sense of dissonance, having a 1 and a 2, or a 4 and a 5 together in these chords. Even having this. If you were to play an A minor 7 all together in this inversion, there's your C, here's your A. It adds a dissonance. There's a little bit of a clash, but it's harmonious with each other. This is just spreading it out, which is a form of what's called open voicing. Taking a chord, these are all of the notes in an A minor 7, but you're spreading them out because you have 2 hands. So we're going to open it there. Now, this is a video that is talking really about minor 7s and major 7s, and I might have to break this one up into a two-parter as well to go through major 7 chords because I do want to hit that. And I wasn't expecting to get into sustained chords, a sus4 or sus2. So for the sake of not trying to rush this, we're going to do that. We're going to make this a 2-part video. So we're going to go ahead and just say that we're covering the suspended 4 and the suspended 2. So if you're going through a song that's repetitive like that, it just gives you more options. You don't have to play these minor 7s, suspendeds, 4, suspended 2. But there's a lot of repeating chords that happen like this in the song. You have the options. So the chorus has the same chords. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. We're going to go back to the root. Now, this next time, I can float between an A minor 7 and then a regular A minor. Oh, it chases me down. And then you can, on your next 5 chord, go between a suspended 4 and a regular 5, or a regular G chord. 5 still I'm found. Same with the F2 and a regular F chord. Leaves 99, root. So it gives you options. It gives you movement inside of that chord without changing the chord. There's all kinds of different melodies that you hear in here that you could go to. Those are just some examples. I had a little note mess up in there, but that gives you examples of how to have movement inside of a chord and not change the chord. All of these are staying on an A minor. Overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. If you watch, I'm keeping a C chord the whole time through all of this. This is another option. We're moving the chord because the bass note is changing, and when you're changing the bass note, most times that ends up changing the chord itself. So I'm going to just stay with a C on the right hand through this. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God already opens it up to a whole different universe. And this is a way you can experiment with these chords. You don't even have to, sometimes I play a chord on here and I don't instantly think this is a G11, flatted 4th, added 9. I don't think about all of that. I could break it down and figure out what it was if I wanted to replicate that again, but if you wanted to know what this was, that's an A minor 7. And if I stay on the C and hit a G, that's simply a G over a C. So that's it would be written C/G. So you're playing C on the right hand, G on the left with the bass. And then this one here, let's see what our notes are. We're playing an F here. So this is technically this would be an F major 7 with a suspended 2, and that's in place of playing your 3rd. That's an F major 7 chord, and then your root again. So again, ways that you can create movement and not change the chord. All within that. Still on the A minor. All of this is A minor. And a lot of that depends on where your note is on the bass, where it is on the left. And I talked about how I only, most of the time I only play one note on my bass hand, and it's because so much movement can happen without that. So you don't have to go through bass lines where you're playing the 1 and the 5 a lot. Sometimes you like that, having the 1 and the 5 or the 1 and the 4 on the bass. It adds a different tone. But in this case, I like adding just one note on that. It kind of helps simplify things. So I'm going to break the video up here. I'm going to go into the next video. So it looks like we'll be moving on to part 5, which would be the second half of this series of minor 7s and major 7s. And now, since we've added it, suspended 4s and suspended 2s. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the video off here, and we'll see you in the next session.